This is pretty crazy. CNN is saying that Donald Trump's approval rating is surging like a rocket. And this was posted yesterday. This is by the Washington Examiner. Let's blow this up here. And so basically what they're saying is CNN's chief data reporter said there's a sharp rise in public approval for President Donald Trump's immigration policy, meaning people are happy that he is doing the deportation strategy he is having. They are happy to see ICE coming into places like Los Angeles. They are excited. They are thrilled to see the National Guard called in and the battalion of Marines. Now, why is that? Why are the American people happy that this is happening? Well, it really boils down to there's different segments to the American public, right? So for the Republican Party, for the Republican members, not the elites, not the ruling class of the Republican Party, but the citizens, the people that make up the voter base, they have desperately wanted mass deportations for decades. This has been an ongoing concern of theirs for the last 20, 25 years, and probably even before then. But really, since around 2004, 2005, you had George W. Bush. He tried to do an amnesty bill somewhere in his, I think it was either the end of his first term or maybe the beginning of the second, somewhere around there. And you had the conservatives came in there and put a stop to it. You had the likes of Rush Limbaugh, who rallied conservatives together, and they put a stop to it. There have been 9 attempts at mass amnesty since 2000. And why all that matters is if you go back to 1986, Simpson-Mazzoli, there was an amnesty bill with Ronald Reagan. They were supposed to build a wall as part of the amnesty deal, but the wall got defunded shortly thereafter. Reagan, even in his memoirs, talked about how this was something that he deeply regretted because it didn't solve the immigration crisis. And part of that deal was giving amnesty to 2.7 million illegal aliens. Now, half of those people lived in California, about 1.4, 1.5, give or take. And those people, most people that are here illegally, they're either because they're doing criminal things, so of course they can't come in on the books, or they are lower socioeconomic class. They are poorer. And people that need assistance tend to vote for the party that gives them the most stuff, and that happens to be the Democrat Party. So this changed everything. California, prior to amnesty of 1986, was a purple-red state, similar to Texas is today. For example, prior to amnesty of 1986, they had voted, the state of California had voted Republican in every national election for 30 years. And then 1988 was the last time that California would go red in a presidential election. This was an eye-opener for the Democrat Party because you could argue that the original amnesty bill of the 1980s was done genuinely to solve a problem. You had a collection of people that had been here illegally for decades, and there was a crisis on how to deal with it. So they did the one-time amnesty. So the Democrat Party then was incentivized to end the wall building process, and that's why here we are 39 years later, and we're still fighting over this, right? So now the Democrat Party realizes, hey, this is a way to get millions of new voters. Because even today, for the last 20 years, up until this last election, which the demographics changed dramatically. Trump gained huge numbers of Latino voters. But up until this last election, over the last 20 years, the Latino community has voted roughly about 60 to 70% Democrat. Obama was right around 70% on his first term. And so it's been overwhelmingly Democrat. And so when it comes back to the Republican voters, why this matters so much is they view this as end game. There's somewhere between 20 and 30 million illegal aliens in the U.S. today. And so they look at this and they say, oh my God, we could lose the country if there's another amnesty attempt. And the left has made no bones about it. This is what they want. The most recent attempt was in 2021, once Biden got in. And you could see a lot of these protesters that have been spouting amnesty now, mass amnesty. This is what the Republican voters are afraid of. So that's the Republican side. Then there's the independents. There's the in-the-middle crowd, right? a lot of them are waking up to the fact that there are too many, and they're balkanizing. And there's a wanton disregard for the rule of law. And over the last 10 years, there has been an ever-increasing ramp-up of rhetoric, of violence, of flaunting the rule of law over immigration that both the Democrat Party and the radicals within them, the ones that are actually doing these protests like we're seeing here, and the illegals joining them in doing this. And this is why when you see the optics of having Mexican flags all over the place during the protest the first couple of days, these kinds of things are only amplifying the problem and showing it for the world to see. But regular folks that are not necessarily married to one political ideology or the other see this stuff and they say to themselves, "Fuck this. I don't want any part of this." And this is why you're seeing Donald Trump's approval ratings skyrocket. So let's go back to the Washington Examiner story. So President Donald Trump then is emboldened in his decision to send the 2,000, now 4,000 National Guard troops to Los Angeles amid the violent protest of immigration enforcement. Now, during a Monday segment on CNN News Central, data analyst Harry Enten explained that Trump's net approval on immigration has experienced a dramatic shift since his first term. See, remember, when he first came down the escalator, first ran for president, only a small segment of the U.S. population was for mass amnesty. And they talk about it here. It has moved from a negative 21% in 2017 to a plus 1% today, according to the aggregate polling. Let's see if they have it here.
All right, we were talking about the analysis in the New York Times this morning.
Let's
there was an article
this.
written saying that President Trump is getting what he wants from these clashes in Los Angeles over immigration and immigration raids. Why? Why does he feel that way? With us now, CNN chief data analyst Harry Enten. So let's unpack that a little bit. The issue of immigration. How is President Trump seen as doing on that?
Yeah, you know, if we just take a look at the baseline numbers here, this is Trump's net approval rating on immigration. It's gone up like a rocket. Compare now versus 8 years ago during Trump.
And this, by the way, this is becoming the meme. This keeps happening. He keeps coming out here and going, whoa, holy shit. You know, Trump's approval rating is going up. How? All this negative coverage. But it's because of stupid protests and riots and looting and those kinds of things. Everyone can see what the radicals on the left are doing. And this is drawing more and more and more people towards Trump's platform because they view him, as crazy as it might sound, they view him as the sane person, as the rational person. And who would have thought that 8 years ago?
Trump's first term. Look at this. In his first term, Trump was way underwater at minus 21 points. But look at this. He's up over 20 points. Now, in the aggregate, he is in positive territory at plus 1 point on his net approval rating. Some other polls even have it a little bit higher than that. There is no issue on which Trump is doing so much better than he was in his first term, more than the issue of immigration. No wonder the Times has written it up the way that he is. Trump is begging for a fight on this because he knows what he's doing so far is working with the American electorate.
Where does immigration rank on issues for him? How is he doing compared to others?
Yeah, so I think what's so important is it is his top issue so far, and the reason it is his top issue.
And this is why the protests are good for Trump. This is why, no matter what anyone is saying on the internet, the terminally online, people like me that go on to platforms like YouTube, like Twitch, and talk about this. Nobody cares about the anti-Trump push that's out there. When you look at the Mayor Karen Bass, talking about, we just need to stop the deportations, or Gavin Newsom. He's an idiot, but that's a whole nother conversation. The point is, all their complaining, all their bitching, all their moaning doesn't mean a damn thing for Donald Trump because the American people want these fucking aliens out of the country. That is the bottom line. It's somewhere around 63% of the American people are for mass deportation of all illegal aliens. All. 63% or 62%, somewhere around there. And you have 87% of voters say that they want, at bare minimum, all the criminal aliens out. And there's something like 800,000 of them. So this is a huge, huge net positive for Donald Trump. Every time he does this stuff, it's good for him. The Marines going down there, the National Guard to Los Angeles, this is what his voters have desperately wanted for at least the last 10 years. So this is a huge winning issue for Donald Trump. Straight up, hands down.
Is because take a look at the individual nuggets in here. Why are people approving of Trump on immigration, approve of these different immigration actions while Trump's administration's program to deport those here illegally? Look at this, 54% approval. How about agents searching your hometown for those that they think are here illegally? Again, positive territory here, above 50%.
Again, this is what I'm saying. Like, look at these numbers. And this is CNN. This is a left-wing radical news site that is anti-Trump to the hilt, pro-Democrat, pro-mass immigration or amnesty. These guys are in the tank for illegal immigration, and they're having to report on this because it's that bad. And you know, if they're reporting, if CNN is saying, hey, these are the numbers, there's a good chance that it's even higher.
For Donald Trump. So it's not just on the broad issue of immigration where Trump is doing well. It's on the specifics. When you dive into the issues, Trump is above 50% in his.
And that's something else. When you look at Trump bringing in the National Guard, why this helps him is Americans are sick and tired of having violent protests and then being told, gaslit and told, no, they're mostly peaceful protests. This has been going on for well over 10 years that we've put up with this. And America is not the nation, has not been traditionally the nation of riots and protests. There was this kind of back in the 60s with the 60s radicals. And there was protests like this here in recent times with Donald Trump. But the legacy of this, and sporadically, right? There was the Rodney King riots in Los Angeles and what have you. But traditionally, America doesn't do the third world riots. We settle our differences at the ballot box. People go in there and they vote. That's how it's traditionally done here. The idea is, okay, we lost this time. We don't like what's happening with the ruling class, but we'll get them next time. But that seems to have gone the way of the dodo. And Americans, they look at illegal immigration as one of the root causes of this kind of chaos. And you can see it happening over in Europe, in Germany, in France, in the UK, where you have mass migration. They have a different problem. There's a religious element to that. You have the Islamic folks coming in. And so you have a cultural difference that is too stark, and they balkanize. So this causes problems. But people can see that and they think, man, we don't want that happening here. Now, we don't have the same problem. We just have people coming mostly from south of the border. So it's not a religious element. It's just a cultural difference. And that is a big difference. But the American public, they don't see that. They just see millions and millions and millions of people have been flooding the zone for decades, and no one is doing anything about it. And they are afraid that their country is going to fall into the ether and not be what they grew up with.
Actions are above 50%, at least with those most directly connected to what's going on right now out in Los Angeles.
So Donald Trump, the president, picking a fight on this, and to an extent, you see Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, a Democrat, and the California Governor Gavin Newsom pushing back. So what do voters see in terms of their perceptions of Republicans, the president, or Democrats, say Gavin Newsom, on this issue?
Yeah, the American electorate believe that the Democrats don't have a clue on the issue of immigration. I mean, you could just take it here. Closer to trust more in immigration, Democrats versus Republicans. Got 3 different polls for you across the board. They all tell the same story. Republicans lead on the issue of immigration. You see it here, CBS +6. You see it here, CNN +6. You see it here, Ipsos, even bigger, +19. No matter what poll you look at, no matter which way you cut it, the American public is with the Republicans. The American public is with Donald Trump, and to a much greater extent than they were in term number 1. And it's not just on the broad issue of immigration, it's on the specifics as well, in which the American public is with Donald Trump and the Republicans. And that is why Donald Trump is eager to take on this fight and eager for those scenes out of Los Angeles.
I was just going to use that word eager. This explains some of that eagerness.
So this is why Donald Trump is showing no fear here. This is a huge net positive for him. Los Angeles and all the idiots that are protesting and rioting and looting and waving Mexican flags, they are only playing directly into his hand. And the truth is, they can't help themselves because for at least the last 10 years, and honestly, for longer, they've been able to get away with this behavior, and the media has covered for them because ideologically, politically, they've been aligned, or at least within the same universe. And so they've been able to get away with it. But social media has destroyed that monopoly. And now that censorship is on its way out, because you have the Trump administration suing the social networks, times are changing. They can no longer control the narrative the way they used to. So it's going to be exciting, and the crazy thing is now Los Angeles, now that the Trump administration's got the troops coming in, guess what? They now have an 8 p.m. curfew for today, at least. And my expectation is likely for a little while here, while they continue to conduct the raids all over the left-wing coast.